Time. These days, it rules our lives down to the second. We wake to alarms, schedule meetings to the minute, and glance at glowing digital numbers all day long. But in the medieval world, telling time was a very different experience. Less precise, perhaps, but no less important. For centuries, the rhythm of life was not governed by wristwatches or smartphones, but by bells, candles, and the steady turn of the sun. Let's start with the most powerful timekeepers of the Middle Ages, the monasteries. Across Europe, monks lived according to the divine office, a strict cycle of prayer and work divided into hours. Matins in the deep of night, lauds at dawn, prime in the early morning, sext at noon, and so on until compline at night. The ringing of a monastery bell called monks to prayer, but it also served as a kind of public clock for surrounding villages. When the bell rang for sext, everyone knew it was midday, time to rest, eat, or mark the halfway point of their labors. Even if you weren't a monk, your life ticked along to the rhythm of their bells. Of course, not all bells were holy. Parish churches rang them for mass, but also to announce weddings, funerals, or danger. A sudden toll could mean fire, invasion, or some urgent gathering of the townsfolk. Over time, bells became the heartbeat of communities, announcing not just sacred hours, but civic life as well. Now, you may be wondering, before mechanical clocks, how did people actually know when to ring a bell? After all, somebody had to decide when it was noon. The simplest answer was the sun. Sundials, whether simple sticks in the earth or carved stone markers, could divide daylight into rough segments. But sundials only worked on sunny days. Cloud cover or long northern winters made them unreliable. So medieval folk got creative. One clever tool was the candle clock. You'd take a thick candle, mark it with evenly spaced lines, and as the wax burned down, you could measure hours passing. Monasteries sometimes used candles like this to schedule nighttime prayers. There were even reports of weighted candles that rang a small bell when they melted down to a thread. Another option was the water clock, or clepsydra, essentially a container that let water drip at a steady pace. These were more precise than candles, though also more fragile. Some monasteries and early scholars used them, but they weren't exactly practical for villagers in the fields. For the vast majority of medieval people, time wasn't about counting hours. It was about rhythms. You knew it was morning when the cock crowed, noon when the sun was overhead, evening when the light dimmed and the Angelus bell rang from the church tower. Farmers timed work by the needs of their crops and animals. Townspeople followed the market bell, which signaled when trading could begin or end. Soldiers marched by the hourglass, which became a handy military tool because it worked in any weather. Still, by the late Middle Ages, the world was changing. Commerce, cities, and universities demanded greater precision. Mechanical clocks began to appear in the 13th and 14th centuries, often installed in cathedrals or town halls. These enormous machines didn't just mark hours, they displayed civic pride. Imagine a great iron mechanism turning gears and striking bells that echoed across the rooftops. The sound was awe-inspiring, and for the first time, time itself became a shared, mechanical measure for entire cities. But even then, these early clocks were often wildly inaccurate by modern standards. They might drift by 15 minutes in a day, or even an hour if neglected. Yet accuracy wasn't the point. What mattered was consistency. The bell rang, and everyone acted together. In a way, medieval time was less about personal schedules and more about collective rhythm. Think of it. A farmer plowing his fields hears the noon bell and knows it's time for a meal. A merchant in town hears the same bell and closes his stall for the midday pause. A monk hears it and heads to the chapel for sext. Different lives, different priorities, but all united by the same ringing sound. And perhaps that's the key difference. Today, time often isolates us, each of us tethered to a personal device, tracking seconds in solitude. In the Middle Ages, time was communal. It rang out from towers and echoed across valleys, calling everyone to mark their lives together. So the next time you glance at your watch or check your phone, imagine instead the toll of a heavy bronze bell across a medieval town, its sound bouncing off stone walls, drifting over fields, reminding every soul within earshot. The day moves on. The hour has come. That was the medieval world's clock, not ticking hands or glowing screens, but bells in the air, guiding life by sound and rhythm.